Hi, if you want to watch exclusive content with hot girls that you won't watch on YouTube, namely where Naruto roasts Kushina and Mikoto and many other hot girls without restrictions, then visit my Boosty channel at the link in the description.
3 years of hopelessness and despair. Naruto tried everything, but Sakura remained a dream, painfully tangible, sitting shoulder to shoulder, and eating away at him from the inside with the impossibility of more. At the last party, everything changed when a drunken smile loomed unbearably close, and then the taste of a mojito pushed in along with his tongue. Naruto clutched his bare shoulders, either trying to hold on to the happiness that had befallen him or trying to escape the overwhelming wave of emotion. Sakura was the type to attack first, and she'd given herself just the time it took to think, the distance between her top shirt button and her belt buckle. Naruto let out a ragged breath, then found himself on the landing, his wrist firmly gripped as Sakura led him up. The straps of her top dug into his sweaty skin, the muscles and shoulder blades behind the latticework drawing his gaze. His throat went dry, the space around him swam, and then the door creaked, and his old life slammed shut with a dull click. The next morning, he woke up hungover and grateful to Sakura for the amazing sex. "I think she actually said, 'It was awesome,' and walked out, leaving Naruto with the shards of his hope. Perhaps then the remnants of common sense were shattered, as well as that bright side that would not have allowed him to return to the Uchiha quarter. The old tea shop, cozy and filled with transparent jars of fragrant leaves, stood empty. Naruto leaned over the counter, peering through the slightly open door between the shelves. "Is anyone here?" There was no answer. But next to the candy jar, a table bell was discovered. The room was ringing intermittently. Determination mixed with anger was replaced by anxiety. There were many legends about the old quarter, as expected, bloody and fatal ones. As a boy, Naruto would run here with a crowd of kids to play hide and seek with the devil. The devil, a short-legged dog, was constantly playing near a house on the outskirts, unleashed and unmuzzled. Teasing a dog and getting to the gate first is fun, stupid, and cruel. Back then, of course, Naruto was only thinking about how to outshine everyone, and how he'd make fun of Choji's torn pant leg. And then came a rainy, dark day with thunder and flashes of lightning, when the dog owner's revenge turned into a game of survival. There was a squelching sound underfoot, raindrops pounded the raincoat and the pyramidal roofs, and then a long nose, a high, powerful chest, and lean black paws appeared from behind the fence. None of them had seen a Doberman before. Narrow streets flashed before his eyes. His chest burned, and the barking behind him continued. Naruto didn't remember how he ended up at the tea house, wet, dirty, and scared. The glass door didn't budge, and he pounded his palms on the cold surface. On the other side, warm and safe, stood a peer, pale, attentive and motionless. "Let me in! Let me in!" In response, the boy merely raised a black eyebrow. "What's wrong with you?" Naruto heard a warning growl behind him and turned around sharply. The dog stood a couple of steps away from him. The wet, vicious creature bared its teeth and pressed its ears back, not taking its burning eyes off its victim pressed against the door. A jump, and the metal canopy swung, giving way to a wooden ceiling. Pain immediately knocked the air out of my lungs, and my head started ringing. Naruto lay on the floor of the tea house, blinking away the black spots before his eyes until the same blank, pale face loomed over him. "You're such an asshole!" The words escaped him as soon as the vibration of pain from his skull along his spine became quieter. The rule, "We should at least maintain some decency with strangers," was knocked out with the blow. I hear it from the sadist. "That never happened." Naruto even sat up, indignant. In response, they looked at him contemptuously from head to toe, and then threw a towel in his face. "Goat." "My pleasure." The goat's name was Uchiha Sasuke. They say his family sold their soul to a demon in exchange for the gift of bewitching the hearts of others. Naruto didn't believe it then. Nor did he ever believe it. But when did disbelief ever stop you on the path to what you wanted? The memory was dispelled by a hand covering his own, and the ringing in the small room immediately died down. Naruto stared in surprise at the long, pale fingers over tanned skin, trying to explain them. He felt the cool metal ring pressing into his palm, contrasting with the warmth of the other's body. And then, resisting the weight that suddenly descended on him, he looked up. Sasuke was impressive in the way a psychopath is when you don't know whether your adrenaline is pumping from fear or admiration. The heart skipped a beat, and then started pounding like crazy. The psychopath smiled. "What would you like?" Naruto felt someone else's hand slip, freeing him from captivity, and he immediately wanted to rub the skin where they had touched a moment ago, and now the air was chilling. "Tea ceremony." "I don't conduct a tea ceremony." The polite smile vanished from his haughty face, and the pupils in his dark eyes began to devour his irises. Naruto had never seen a blacker gaze. "Take this one out." "This one?" And again, the mockingly raised eyebrow, just like many years ago. Time doesn't cure bastardry. His palms met the smooth surface of the counter, and Naruto leaned forward. "You know what I mean?" The corner of his mouth twitched slightly, and suddenly Sasuke was closer than expected. Another couple of centimeters, and his breath would scorch his chapped lips, and strands of black hair would slide down his cheeks. Naruto leaned back, trying to escape the piercing gaze, but his wrists tightened, and then Sasuke yanked him toward himself. The edge of the counter dug into his ribs, and the tip of his nose slid along his cheek to his ear. "Do you know what you're asking for?" "Sasuke!" He called him by name for the first time, and felt the grip on his wrists tighten. "Yes, Naruto?" The Uchiha's muttered name, almost like lips on skin, sent a shiver down my spine. I had to pause for a moment before responding. "Perform the ceremony for me." "Name!" Sasuke finally pulled away, but it didn't make him feel any better. The dark gaze pierced him again, like a katana, right through to his lungs. "Haruna Sakura!" Her lips barely parted, as if all her strength had been drained, preventing her from saying the cherished two words. Cool fingers touched his chin, cheekbones, and then squeezed. Now Naruto couldn't get out of this under any circumstances. "Repeat." "Huh?" The fingers dug into the skin, so the words got stuck, and Naruto had to grab the other man's hand, squeeze it in response, so as to force him to at least slightly unclench the fingers piercing his cheeks. Sasuke grinned, but Naruto finished. "Haruna Sakura." "HM." Sasuke didn't let go. Naruto waited. The pause dragged on. "Uchiha, hands." "Likewise." "Let me go, and I will let you go." "Certainly." But instead of freedom, Naruto was pulled towards himself, and then the eyes opposite him painted the world scarlet. At first, the aroma of fruity freshness and sweets filled him, and then a dim light crept under his eyelids. Naruto woke up sitting on the floor in front of a tea table. A tall glass vessel caught the light on the dark, carved surface. Naruto blinked away the last of his narcotic and stared in disbelief before him. A human heart pulsated in the transparent teapot, surrounded by delicate rose petals and dried fruit. "What the?" "Haruna Sakura. A little sweet, but weakly brewed. It's almost not irritating." Sasuke sat opposite, like a geisha from the past, upright and in a kimono, with his hands folded on his knees. Only his gaze said that no one was serving Naruto here, quite the opposite. "The rules are simple. Talk to her, think about her, sigh for her, and your heart will be filled with your feelings. What if I get angry or upset? You can cry into your pillow or jerk off to a photo. It doesn't matter if it's her photo. Oh, what if it's not hers? Then you will become part of my collection." "What?" "You've come for someone else's heart, Naruto. The risk is appropriate." "Is this like a test of sincerity?" "You have a week, and try to think about Sakura." On the second day, Sakura agreed to go on a date. And wow! It seemed the devil's tea had begun to brew. Her gaze warmed, and her hand began to seek his at the first opportunity. A wind picked up on the Ferris wheel, turning the open cabins into a cold ordeal. But Naruto didn't mind. Sakura burrowed into his jacket, her breath tickling his neck. It was good, warm right in the heart. The smooth walls contracted, and the stumps of the vessels trembled with each jolt. The golden water bubbled and swirled like cherry petals. He heard a gurgling sound, the dull, rapid beating of a heart. The sound grew louder, like an organ bomb in the final seconds before it exploded. Defuse or run. Run. Naruto reached out to the chaos behind the glass when his jacket sleeve was tugged. Let's have a cup of hot cocoa. He was back in the park. Nearby, Sakura was reaching toward a small cafe. Her fingers were stiff from the cold. I'm for any kind of fuss except tea. When did he stop hearing her? Sakura would open her mouth and probably laugh, and then she'd keep talking, waving her fork and poking him in the shoulder. Naruto ran his hand over his face. It didn't help. I'll just be a minute. The toilet stalls were empty, allowing me to take a few deep breaths and slowly exhale. The water warmed my palms, bringing me back into touch with my body and reality. The extractor fan hummed overhead, and voices, the clatter of dishes, and the click of heels drifted through the door. Naruto splashed warm water on his face and hovered over the sink, letting the drops of water run down his cheeks and chin. The hand dryer on the left started working. Did anyone come in? Naruto turned his head. The car hummed lonely for a couple more seconds before falling silent. Even technology is going crazy these days. Sakura must be waiting for a long time. A quick glance at her reflection, and then it's time to go. Naruto froze in front of the mirror. The sounds disappeared, and only a drop of water smashed loudly against the ceramic. Uchiha stood to the right, imperturbable, shoulder to shoulder. His dark, intent gaze. The corners of his pale lips twitched and curled upward. Naruto jumped to the side, turning around at the same time. He is the only one in the toilet. He flew out, slamming the door and almost knocking down the waitress. Are you done? The check, please. Sakura barely complained. The strawberry basket remained uneaten. That evening, lying on his bed and staring at the ceiling, Naruto tried to comprehend what was happening. Had Sasuke decided to play dirty, or was he going crazy? Feeling for his mobile phone under the pillow, he dialed the recently entered number. You should call Sakura, not me. I saw you. Obviously. I saw you in the reflection. It is quite possible. What does this mean? I'm not a psychologist, Naruto. Sasuke passed out. Devil. The phone flew to the floor, followed by the pillow. On the fifth day, a leisurely kiss turned into a hungry fight. Sakura straddled him, removing her t-shirt and revealing her firm breasts. It was damp, wet, and he wanted to lick everything. His eyes and hands slid over. His jeans slipped down, followed by his underwear, and suddenly Sakura was below him, between his legs, and Naruto gripped the armrests of the chair until his knuckles turned white. It was hot and envelopingly soft. First at the very edge, and then deeper and deeper, until the warmth absorbed almost the entire length. Naruto wanted more. They ground between her buttocks, and now there was the desired rhythm in front, and where no one had touched him yet, an alarming pressure was building. Sharp, painful, and even better than when Sakura moaned and gave in at that ill-fated party. A tight cord coiled in her lower abdomen. Just a little more. Please! Naruto didn't recognize his own voice. The grip tightened, and he was suddenly yanked down so hard that his eyes flew open in surprise, and a cry of shock mingled with a moan of intrusion. Sasuke entered in one smooth motion, holding her tightly by the hips. Before Naruto could recover, his back jerked upward from the impact, then slid lower, and the space shrank to the upholstery of the chair beneath and the elastic muscles above. His hands were clinging to everything, and Sasuke was hovering over him, his gaze fixed on his face, his breath ragged against his lips. Naruto turned away and arched, trying to get away, only to find himself pressed against him so tightly that his chest was heaving. Sasuke picked up a pace that made his vision blur and his leg muscles ache with the strain. Think about Sakura. Sasuke chuckled. The hand came free and hit her sharp cheekbone. Sakura screamed in surprise. What the hell? Naruto immediately caught the hit. His nose sniffled, but didn't break. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over you, he said, trying to catch her face in his hands. Let's apply something cold. I don't think there will be a bruise. Sakura stopped fighting back and froze, allowing herself to be examined. I think I'm going crazy. You seem like an idiot. Bring me what you have in the freezer. Then they sprawled out on the couch. Naruto counted the shadows on the ceiling, and Sakura lay on his lap. His hand was cramping from the cold. He didn't even grab a towel, just applied the frozen package of meat to it just as it was. Do you want to order rolls? I never finished. Naruto pretended not to hear, but Sakura didn't give up. You too, it seems. Seems. She suddenly pushed his hand away and sat up straight, looking straight at him and raising a thin eyebrow just like him. Naruto swallowed. The piece of meat ended up somewhere under the sofa, and the flat stomach was completely accessible to the kissing trail. Sakura was getting excited to Indy, becoming soft, loud, and wet, while Naruto raced away his thoughts, tracing his lips over the delicate skin from the curve under her kneecap to her thigh. His tongue slid inside, and Sakura sucked in a breath. Then a drawn-out moan turned into a song that he wanted to scream. They grabbed his hair and pulled him up. Naruto broke away to meet the Uchiha's gaze. This is Sakura. I'm with Sakura now. Sakura. Sasuke smiled to one side, the way only he could, mixing arrogance and pleasure in the slightly upturned corner of his mouth, and then pressed down with his hand, driving Naruto back down to his throat. He couldn't relax. The Uchiha wasn't being merciful, and he lacked the resolve to hit. Naruto couldn't believe what he was seeing and feeling. Sasuke came all over his face, then jerked up to lick the whitish drops from his eyelashes, cheeks, and lips. His throat was sore, his eyes stung, and it felt like every bone had been ripped out of his body. Naruto arched, allowing the Uchiha to bite his chin, neck, and collarbone, and then felt the Uchiha's desire harden again, as did the grip on his hips. Naruto lowered himself slowly, hiding his eyes under his bangs, burying his face somewhere in a pale shoulder, and feeling the quiet whispers that sent shivers down his spine. Further. I can't, hoarsely, desperately lost. Rose petals burned at the edge of his consciousness, and the floral scent faded. Naruto tried to timidly cling to the elusive image. They ran their fingers along the spine, up to the protruding bone, the corner of the light hair, and down again. Naruto sucked in a breath and exhaled, his lips almost touching the other's skin, and then felt a sharp tug on his hair back. Sasuke held him, so he could look him in the eye and keep his back straight. He crucified him like a butterfly, both upward and with his gaze. And as Naruto, surrendering, sank lower, his irises bloomed like a crimson sunset. Below. Enough. Naruto grabbed the Uchiha by the wrist, pressing his thumb into the hollow where his pulse beats, and forcing him to release his fingers, pulling at his hair so that his body bent in a painful arc. It hurts! Sakura looked pitifully beneath him. Her delicate skin would definitely leave a bruise. Naruto slowed his pace, carefully leaning down to her trembling lips, kissing them with his own that were just as trembling. He'll kill the Uchiha, strangle him with his own hands. If he doesn't go crazy. The stairs were unlit. Close the front door, and you'll be left in the dark. Naruto took his time. The rough wall felt cold against his hand, and the steps slid gently over each other, making every step precarious. Ahead, on the gray slab, a narrow strip of light from the half-open door was glowing warmly. They were waiting for him in the tea room. First, Naruto saw a table and a heart. Sakura's tender heart beat in the brown water with black petals. Fire and ash instead of flowers and fruit. You deceived me. In what? Sasuke stood in the shadow of one of the shelves. He didn't look at Naruto, adjusting the cuff of his shirt, as if he'd been caught getting ready and the visitor hadn't been part of his plans. You're even asking? A moment later, Naruto pinned the Uchiha to the shelves. The vials clanked dangerously. Sasuke responded with a calm gaze, allowed himself to be shaken, and an angry, "Seriously?" was breathed right into his face. "And which rule did I break?" "You?" The impudence of the Uchiha deprived him of words. "Me?" Sasuke was clearly enjoying the situation. "Return everything to the way it was. And miss your heart? You'll find something else. I want yours. I've wanted it for a long time." "Go on!" Naruto pulled his hands away as if from fire and retreated to a safe distance, away from the Uchiha's attraction. "Now these are my words, Naruto." Sasuke smiled like a winner who has already mentally received his trophy and is slowly, with visible pleasure, deciding what to do with it. Naruto tried to calm down. Inhale for a count of 3, exhale for a count of 3, hold his breath. That's better. He can handle it. I still have a day. Night. Even if my heart ends up in one of the bottles, it will not be yours. Tell that to Sakura. I'll tell you this. HN. They parted without saying goodbye. Everyone already knew they would meet again, and that would be only the beginning. Don't leave me. Sasuke opened the black velvet case with a click and took out a snow-white half-mask of a fox demon. Stand still. Naruto suppressed his irritation and froze. Days spent serving the tea demon had taught him to calculate his strength, and not to rush into trouble if the outcome wasn't worth it. Don't take it off. Sasuke leaned forward and pulled the bands tightly at the back of his head. He felt uncomfortable. The mask was suffocating and robbing him of oxygen. He wanted to relieve the pressure. Naruto instinctively reached out to the smooth, lacquered surface. The Uchiha grabbed his wrists, stopping him. I said don't take it off. Why? Where we're going, this will be your only protection if I'm not around. You told me not to leave you. And I hope you've realized that not following my orders will cost you dearly. Sasuke was alluding to the recent incident with the restless spirit. Naruto was certain he was helping a servant at the temple, near which the herbs needed for the tea shop grew. It turned out the girl had been dead for a long time, and all that remained of her was a desire to be reunited with her lover. Any young and sturdy man would have been suitable for the role of lover. A naive boy. Naruto had already contracted the spirit spell, and was losing sleep and appetite when Sasuke noticed something was wrong. Naturally, Sasuke's prohibitions on communication were met with hostility. The Uchiha, losing patience but not wanting to lose his energy, dragged Naruto to the cemetery next to the temple and forced him to dig up the grave. Naruto would long remember opening the coffin and discovering a skeleton in women's clothing clinging to the boy's half-rotted body. The same fate would have awaited him had he continued communicating with the spirit. Sasuke looked expectant. Naruto could see that today was more serious than usual. This wasn't a neutral zone in the human world. They were about to cross over, and for Naruto, this was his first visit to a world where humans had no place. I understand everything. What else do I need to know? Keep a handle on yourself. Demons enjoy strong emotions. What emotions do you enjoy? The question blurted out, clearly not fitting within the confines of a working relationship. Ever since the ill-fated tea ceremony, Sasuke's interest had been purely businesslike. No hint of the vulgar visions that had clouded Naruto's mind during the magical ritual. Naruto was pleased, and it was worth following the established rules, but curiosity had taken its toll. Sasuke didn't answer right away. It seemed the question was as surprising to him as it was to Naruto. Guess. Naruto watched as Sasuke pulled another black case from the middle drawer of the dresser. The lid swung open, revealing a bloody, Hanya demon half-mask, distorted with rage and obsession. There were no tapes. As soon as Sasuke brought his snarling mouth to his face, the material grew into his skin, covering his nose and everything below. Naruto swallowed, looking at the snow-white fangs sticking out from the corners of the mouth at the top and bottom, like from the mouth of a boar. Everything was falling into place. Sasuke was drawn to those who were passionate, and Naruto had always been a passionate person. He devoted himself wholeheartedly to any endeavor or relationship. You like passionate ones, right? Don't flatter yourself. You're here to do the job you're capable of doing. Nothing more. And what kind of work? To be my tame fox demon. I am a human being. Not tonight. The shutters of the shop slammed shut, and Naruto froze, finding himself in pitch darkness. Then he felt a firm grip on his wrist, a tug on his hand, and the floorboards creaked under 2 pairs of boots. It felt like they had gone further than the front door, but they hadn't gone anywhere, otherwise the darkness of the room would have given way to the dim light of the moon. The scent of tea replaced the smell of dampness. It became chilly and uneasy. They walked in silence. Sasuke had previously warned against drawing unnecessary attention to oneself during the transition. Don't chatter and move forward. Don't be distracted by noise or other provocations from the other world. Ahead, he heard the rustle of the Uchiha's clothes and his muffled footsteps. His own steps suddenly began to split. Naruto listened. It sounded as if someone behind him was trying to keep up with him, but wasn't always on target. Sasuke's grip tightened. Then the something stopped pretending and ran, thumping dully on the floorboards. Sasuke cursed and pushed Naruto forward. Don't stop. And you? And I am a demon. I don't see anything. I'm not going without you. Sasuke didn't have time to protest. Judging by the noise, he'd been knocked down and a struggle had ensued. Naruto stepped aside, wanting to press his back against the wall for some support. Damn, Uchiha. You should have given me night vision goggles. There were dull thuds, the clang of metal, Sasuke's curses, and then a strange pop, like a firecracker, and everything went silent. Sasuke? There was a rustling sound, as if someone had straightened up, and then the footsteps began to approach. Sasuke, is that you? There was no answer, but suddenly it felt much colder. A draft? Why hadn't he felt it before? He took a cautious step to the side, but someone's hand pressed against the wall, blocking his way. Naruto decided not to hesitate any longer and struck in front of him. His hand was intercepted, and then a familiar voice was heard. You're afraid. You're observant as always. Naruto felt the tension drain from his muscles. No matter how irritating Sasuke was, after the stress he'd been through, anything seemed better than silence. Fear turns me on. What? Naruto hit the back of his head on the wall, and then felt the weight of someone else's body. A knee squeezed between his legs, pressing into his groin, and cold fingers squeezed his neck. And again, the blood rushed out of his stomach, causing him to feel a sinking sensation like he was falling. Yes, well done. Show me more of what you can do. Naruto knew a lot, like how to break free from a strangler's grip. Raise your right arm, bend it, and slam your elbow down, then sideways, into the captor's nose. When there's more distance between their bodies, you can use your legs too. The creature with Sasuke's voice retreated with a groan. You scum. You should be smarter. Uchiha don't feed on fear. You're finished. Naruto, blind, tried to crouch down, hoping to avoid a direct blow for a moment. However, as soon as he crouched, the skin beneath his mask began to tingle and itch, and then the darkness around him ceased. The darkness remained, but it was no longer impenetrable. Naruto clearly saw the form of a humanoid entity before him. A dense bundle of energy, it took on the features of a young warrior with a long, 3-bladed scythe. The scythe rose up and then rushed forward, threatening to decapitate the demon. Naruto dodged it effortlessly. A roll, a leap, and he was behind the demon. A low-born one-tailed fox can't fool me. Naruto didn't have time to process the meaning of what was said. He had to dodge sharp blades again. Excitement coursed through his veins. His gums itched, and his tongue grazed his teeth. Naruto froze in surprise, feeling sharp fangs in his mouth. The delay had cost him dearly. The demon had managed to knock him down and pin him down, but the depressing position was less disconcerting than the discomfort of his own tail pinned to the floor. His eyes widened from a flurry of new sensations. The demon narrowed his eyes, then put his hand where it shouldn't have been, freeing his tail and running the fur through his fingers. Fiery. And you are not as simple as you seem. Get off me. You're right. Uchiha don't feed on fear. But I do. On fear and pain. The demon leaned down to Naruto's neck and inhaled blissfully, as if he were a delicacy. Perhaps he was. The shock of his own body's transformation, his first serious encounter with an otherworldly force, and the unfamiliar surroundings had triggered his nervous system to the fullest. He needed to get his emotions under control. Naruto decided to focus on the other man's energy flows. The blue tendrils of power coiled in his muscles, making the demon resemble a skinless man in this spectrum. Only in some places the flows were darker, and in others lighter. Was it possible that the lighter areas were more vulnerable? Don't even try. The demon whispered right into my ear, pressing close. They say it's very painful to lose a tail, especially when you only have one. And the head? Naruto was happy to hear the cold threat in Sasuke's voice for the first time. There was a cutting sound, and the demon's head flew off. The rest of the journey was unforgettable. The walk was long and quiet, and then the darkness, like a shoji, receded, and the bright light of hundreds of floating paper lanterns and the abundance of colors of the interior decor dazzled the newcomers. A girl in a cat mask approached the newcomers, bowed obsequiously, and invited them into the next room. When the wooden wall closed, cutting off the guests from the noisy hall, Sasuke roughly turned Naruto around with his back to him. What the hell? He found the strength to express indignation, despite his mind being overwhelmed by the abundance of details. Not very comfortable in pants and with a tail, huh? What do you care? The tail was indeed trying to pull down the pants, revealing something that shouldn't be shown in polite company. Do not move. There was the sound of metal being exposed, and then the area below his waist felt looser and cooler. Naruto turned around, trying to see how decent his rear view was now. Should I help you or do it myself? Sasuke didn't look below his face, but sparks of amusement danced in his dark eyes. By yourself. Naruto felt doubly awkward. First of all, it was the first time he had to straighten his own tail. Pushing the furry appendage through the slit turned out to be a very tactile experience. The fur was smooth, soft, and sparkling. Touching it with your hand was a pleasure, especially when you ran your hand along the tail, smoothing it hair by hair. If Naruto had had a little more time, he would have experimented with these new sensations. Naruto. Don't get carried away. Are you jealous? It's hot. My view? Your emotions. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who finds them appealing. Keep your cool. If it weren't for your nervousness during the crossing, Hayden would have let us through without a problem. Sorry, this is my usual pastime, walking in the dark with a demon by the hand. And why am I so nervous? Oh yeah, probably because nothing was really explained to me. Why am I here, Sasuke? And why do I have this now? Naruto pointed eloquently at his tail. You wanted freedom. We are here to set you free. In exchange for what? Last time I was promised love, but I got a collar. Don't tempt me, or I'll really put it on. In exchange for what, Sasuke? You will open the door for me. What's wrong with her? Not everyone can open it. More precisely, only a demon fox with 9 tails. I have 1 tail. And the night is just beginning. The wall, painted with red spider lilies, moved aside, and the cat mask appeared again. They are waiting for you. Naruto turned his head, unsure of where to look. Bright robes, floating lanterns, scurrying servants in cat masks, incense and partitions. Light wooden frames covered with translucent painted paper stood here and there, unsupported, reminiscent of movie theater poster stands. Cat servants in indecently short kimonos rustled as they slid open the shoji doors, revealing dark squares of space, then dove inside and vanished. The partitions returned to their original positions with a dull thud, as if the frames had something to thud against. The maid who greeted Sasuke and Naruto led the guests to the back of the hall, where the lanterns hovering beneath the wooden beams of the ceiling sparsely illuminated the room. A lone door awaited the arrivals, standing in partial shadow. A dim green light emanated from the paintings in the framed windows. Snakes. Emerald snakes adorned the translucent paper. As if sensing the approach of life, the colors deepened, their scales shimmered, and the reptile's eyes moistened, transforming from drawing into flesh. Naruto flinched back when one of the snakes detached itself from the canvas, its jaws wide open, and hissed. Sasuke didn't flinch. There was a rustling of fabric, and Naruto watched in horror as the Uchiha bared his shoulder, pulling down his shirt. "What are you?" Naruto didn't have time to finish. The snake lunged forward and bit into his snow-white skin, biting until thin streams of scarlet blood flowed. The maid, hiding her eyes under half-lowered lashes, carefully but greedily traced the glittering scarlet droplet streaking across Sasuke's chest. She couldn't help but want to step forward and hide the Uchiha behind her. Meanwhile, the sated snake's scales turned from green to garnet red. The tangle of smooth, flexible bodies began to stir, unraveling and releasing one guardian after another. When the last snake disappeared onto the back of the shoji, the cat touched the frame and pushed it aside. It smelled damp. The darkness that opened up seemed darker than behind the other doors. Naruto inhaled and exhaled quietly, pushing the tension out of his shoulders. Sasuke turned around. His unbuttoned shirt revealed a trail of red running from his shoulder blade, over his collarbone, and down. "We need to change before the meeting." "Meeting with whom?" Naruto tried to focus his thoughts on the important information, pushing away the images of the predatory scene and Sasuke's casual nudity. "With those on whom your freedom depends." Uchiha extended his hand. "I don't advise letting go." Naruto silently squeezed the outstretched palm, which had already become habitual over the too long night. His stomach flipped, his breath caught, and the palm of his hand, clasped in Sasuke's, grew damp. Just as weakness began to wash over his limbs and nausea rolled in, his feet touched the ground. Naruto sank forward and found himself in Sasuke's patient embrace. His breathing returned, Sasuke's shoulder didn't disappear, and his hands continued to support him. "Can you stand?" Sasuke responded in an unusually sympathetic voice, sending shivers down my spine. The warmth of someone else's body on my cheek, the firm, supportive grip, like that distant, past-life illusion where Naruto would lose his breath, thrusting himself into wet slaps and approving moans. "Yes, I can already." The end of the memory sobered him, like an ice-cold shower after sleep. Naruto turned away, ran a hand through his hair, and glanced back, focusing on the here and now. The corridor resembled catacombs. Perhaps that's what they were. The narrow stone tunnel branched off, and somewhere in the niches, the brass handles of wooden doors gleamed. The maid waited silently at one of the niches. Sasuke stepped forward. Naruto was beginning to feel tired. Too many events and minutes spent side by side with the demon. A human past, with its difficulties, but without mystical entities, echoed with a nagging pain in his chest. He wanted to get out, stop, wake up, anything, just slow down. Sasuke seemed to sense his mood. He nodded to the cat, and she bowed and disappeared into a purple haze. The Uchiha creaked the door and opened it, inviting him in. "We have time to rest." Inside, a modest and cozy setting awaited. A clay bowl of water sat dark on a low bench near the entrance, a towel neatly laid next to it. A little further away sat a wooden screen and a soft, armless sofa. A warm, quiet light glowed from a lone floor lamp next to the screen. Sasuke took off his shoes and socks, took a towel and slightly wet it with water, then wiped the feet and ankle of one leg, and then the other, just as leisurely, as if he had several weeks to rest, and not barely an hour. 2 pairs of sandals were waiting under the bench, one with black and one with red straps. Sasuke put on the black ones, then wet the towel again. "Take off your shoes." The coolness of the stone slabs licked his bare feet. The sensation was pleasant and invigorating. However, the fatigue from jumping through the door did not subside. Naruto reached the bench and sat down heavily, reaching out to Sasuke to take the towel. Before his eyes, the ceiling tilted slightly, and the air trembled like molten glass. Sasuke pulled his hand back, froze, looking down for a split second, and then Naruto's eyes widened in surprise, and he held his breath. The Uchiha knelt before him, carefully taking his foot and applying a damp cloth. "Why are you?" Naruto couldn't finish. The calming coolness on his skin and in his gaze confused his thoughts and stopped the reaction in his body. Sasuke, making sure that no one would kick him, confidently grabbed his ankle with one hand, and with the other, he ran a towel over his entire foot, wiping away the sweat and odor. Naruto didn't move. The Uchiha, kneeling and looking up, stirred images drawn long after those tea-intoxicated days. Back then, Naruto was still learning to work in a shop and to be in the same room with someone who had so rudely intruded into his thoughts and chest, casually snatching away his right to his own feelings and heart. Back then, fantasies would catch him off guard in the most unexpected places, and Sasuke, finding him disheveled and with his jeans unbuttoned in the pantry, would coldly say something like, "It'll pass," or, "It'll get easier." It truly did get easier after sleepless nights where, in dreams between dreams and nightmares, Sasuke's mouth was red and wet, his eyes wet and pleading. Naruto swallowed loudly as the Uchiha moved on to the other leg. "Talk to me normally." The words were difficult to find, but Naruto decided it was now or never. "What exactly do you want to know?" The hand squeezed the leg a little tighter than necessary. "What is behind the door that I must open?" Sasuke froze, the flickering light from the lantern dancing menacingly across the demon's scarlet mask. An unpleasant premonition crept in, like shadows in the corners of a room. Sasuke looked like a dead doll, and only the mask remained alive and shimmering brightly. "Your freedom and the one I need." The voice was detached and even, as if the Uchiha had gone far back in time. "Isn't that an object? Who will I find there?" Sasuke stood up and carelessly threw the towel into the bowl, splashing water. "The sandals are under the bench." "Put them on. I'm going to change." Every step now echoed with a dull wooden thud. Sasuke disappeared behind the screen. Naruto sighed and bent down to retrieve his shoes. The geto with the bright red straps on his feet seemed out of place. Naruto stood up, swaying unaccustomedly at the height of the shoes. "Why are mine red?" "Because I have just begun the path of the demon." "But I'm not a demon." Naruto frowned and tried to walk to the screen, which was already covered with pants and a shirt thrown over it. "Only a demon can open the door." "Then open it yourself." Naruto saw Sasuke's shadow appearing on the thin fabric among the scarlet spider lilies. A flexible, sharp shadow, frozen for a split second. "I couldn't." The shadow turned to Naruto. The vulnerability in his voice dispelled the irritation, replacing it with attentive curiosity. Just beyond the thin screen, a step away from Naruto, stood the man who had previously seemed an oppressive force and an insurmountable obstacle, naked and seemingly emotional for the first time. Naruto felt a tingling sensation in his chest and a familiar one in his gums. His hands twitched toward the mask, probing the hard edges. Under his warm fingertips, the material softened, and short fur suddenly prickled against the bare whiteness. Naruto pulled his hands back, inhaled, and the sense hit him with sweat and the attentive interest of another's body. His hand slid over the mask again, over the convex muzzle, and found a wet nose. A wet fox nose. What's happening? A woolly ear twitched at the sound of the geto. Sasuke emerged from behind the screen wearing only a hakama. "You are addressing." Everything's fine. Changes in your body mean changes in your perception. I'll help you cope with this." "How?" "First, let's satisfy our hunger." "I wouldn't mind a snack." Naruto veered away as Sasuke approached. The tea demon's presence had always felt like a crushing, oppressive force, sometimes preventing him from concentrating on his daily duties, sometimes spreading like a tingling sensation that he wanted to relieve by breaking small utensils or deliberately mislabeling tea tins. Sasuke lost his temper a couple of times, and then the demon's instincts must have told him. Naruto had found his own way to cope, either with stress or with unconscious desires that were gaining color, but not yet a clear outline. Now the outline was sharp and insistent, as if inner clarity had come with a fox's strength. Sasuke's attention didn't oppress, but rather stirred, comforted, and stirred old wounds and hope. Hope for a life where Naruto had those who needed and cared for him. Perhaps that's why he'd adjusted so quickly to his new situation. Sasuke had offered shelter, work, and purpose. Sasuke had always been there. Sasuke had saved him from a restless spirit. Yes, he had his own goals, but who in this world is selfless? The cool, sparsely furnished, dimly lit room was suddenly illuminated by the unusually gentle touch of someone else's fingers. Sasuke touched the tip of his furry ear and slid it behind it. Naruto instinctively reached out to meet the caress, then finally came to his senses and pulled back. Do all demons have problems with personal boundaries, or is it just you? You wanted a snack. The toothy half-mask hid a grin, but not his eyes. Those black eyes sparkled with amusement. Sasuke was having fun. Again. At his expense. Because Naruto knew nothing, and that ignorance left him vulnerable to manipulation and ridicule. Now, in detail, how is this connected? Naruto retreated toward the wall, putting more distance between himself and the demon, who for some reason was suddenly causing a hard-to-control excitement again. It happened like that on sleepless nights. Was it the influence of a spell or a new power? It's better to show. Sasuke didn't move, but Naruto raised his hand as if he wanted to stop the approaching wall. No. You won't come near me until you explain it clearly, plainly, and without mockery. Okay. Sasuke suddenly became more accommodating than he had been a minute ago, and Naruto couldn't decide whether to be happy or even more worried. You already know that demons feed on emotions, right? I noticed. Naruto caught every word, while trying to stand up straight because of the increasing dizziness. Any strong emotion is good, but everyone has their own preferences. Haydn was led by fear, and you by... His shoulder blades touched the cool wall, and his rough tongue ran over his still human upper lip. Obsession. The T in my nickname is about the family business, but the way I run it is about obsession. I was obsessed with Sakura, and you, obsessed with my obsession? It became harder to focus. The crossed snow-white fangs against the red suddenly grew closer. What's more important now is what emotion attracts you. I don't understand. Naruto felt pressure on his forearm. The Uchiha stood close, holding him with one hand, either to keep him from running away or from fainting. The mask you put on protects you from demons because it makes you a demon. Naruto involuntarily touched his face, as if convincing himself of the reality of his new appearance. And while you are here and wearing it, your food preferences will differ from human ones. Naruto felt the light brush of someone else's hair against his face, and looked up to be met with the very attention he'd been seeking his whole life. Sasuke was looking at him, not through him. So, I need to understand what I want. It's not about understanding, but about not resisting what you feel. The pressure on his hand eased and shifted to his hips. Sasuke's fingers slid to his tail, running up the hair from bottom to top. Naruto peeled himself away from the wall and leaned forward, clutching the Uchiha's bare shoulders. Your head is spinning from the changes and hunger, and you need to change your clothes. Naruto pressed himself against the other's chest, buried his fox-like nose in Sasuke's neck, and before he could stop himself, ran his tongue wetly and long over the skin where the carotid artery beat. Ha! Sasuke reacted immediately, grabbing the blonde strands at the back of Naruto's head and pulling him back. You'll have time to bleed me later. Let's find another way to feed you. Naruto only had time to gasp when he was caught. And a few steps later, he felt the rough upholstery beneath him and Sasuke's insistence above him. There was a thud as Agita slipped off, and his other leg, bent, pressed its wooden block against the sofa. The red strap dug into his skin. Naruto bit his lip. The pressure of Sasuke's fingers and the leather strap of his sandal held back his drifting mind and dispelled the warmth below his waist. Naruto lifted his hips as Sasuke pulled down his pants and underwear and arched his back, allowing his torso to be exposed and the clothes to be removed completely. A breeze slid across his skin, and Sasuke's hand moved down his chest, toward his stomach, and settled firmly on the muscles trembling with anticipation. Naruto enjoyed the feeling of Sasuke's pressing palm. His imagination conjured up vulgar movie scenes with little plot but plenty of kinks for those who don't just want to feel skin on skin, but want it tight inside, and while their partner's hand presses against his stomach, they lose their breath from the pace, growing with desire. Naruto wanted to be desired. "You're not far from me." Sasuke looked at me attentively and, as if, with a little regret. The coolness from the damp air became uncomfortable. I wanted to cover myself up. "What are you talking about?" Naruto felt his palms go cold. Sasuke was going to laugh, get up, and leave, and Naruto would wonder what he'd done wrong. Fear must have shown on his face. "Why are you so upset?" Sasuke leaned over, placing his hand to the left of Naruto's head. "Are you tired of losing yourself to the changes in other people's views?" Naruto didn't move. Fear from the past paralyzed his limbs. Fear of abandonment. Fear that had given rise to an unbridled desire to win the love of others. Fear that had driven him to continue trying to win Sakura's feelings back. Fear that had receded under Sasuke's gaze, and under his own gaze, had taken on a new hue. The smooth material of the mask became noticeable on my face again. My sense of smell and hearing became dulled. "This won't do." Sasuke touched Naruto's cheek, slid it higher under the edge of the mask, and ran the pad of his thumb over the delicate skin near his eye, wiping away the moisture. "I'm cold and I feel smaller." Naruto spoke quietly, as if his strength had left him. "The downside of a demon's desire is its weakness. You've lost some of your metamorphoses, but your tail remains. That's good." "Cold." "It's so difficult with you." Sasuke stood up. There was the sound of Geta and the rustling of fabric, and then the Uchiha returned, dressed in a kimono and holding a white cloth in his hands. "Raise up." Naruto felt the fabric wrap around him. Sasuke didn't bother dressing him in a kimono, just draped it over his shoulders. "Warmer?" Naruto looked up, his gaze lost. "First I'd lost my parents, then control of my life, and now my body. I don't even know who I am anymore. You say my desires are more important. I thought I wanted to be with Sakura, then I wanted you. And now I'm just cold." "You never wanted either me or Sakura." Sasuke sat at Naruto's feet on the stone floor with a scattering of yellow reflections from the lantern. "You want to feel yourself, Naruto. To feel through others. Because you can't look at yourself the way I look at you now." Sasuke raised his hands to his face, and the edges of the red mask kissed like a chemical solution, separating, and then Naruto saw a greedy look and pink, slightly parted lips, like in dark fantasies, with a painful desire between the legs. "I want to suck you off." "Fuck." "For you now, yes." Sasuke smiled so hard that the fire inside him began to flare up again, and then Naruto spread his legs and leaned back, trying to shake off the chilling breath of the past. They took their time down below. First, they gently touched his kneecap with their lips, then grabbed the skin on the inside of his thigh with their teeth, and again. The kiss is already higher, and closer to the place where it has already risen in anticipation of the warmth of someone else's mouth. Naruto bit his lip as he was finally firmly grasped. A wet sound struck his nerves along with new sensations. And then his mind was lost in the excruciatingly skilled throat and hands. When he couldn't bear it any longer, Sasuke suddenly stopped, stood up, and hovered over him, bracing his hands on the back of the sofa on either side of Naruto's head. "Finish it yourself. I want to see how good you feel." Sasuke shielded Naruto from any unnecessary sights or thoughts. Only the Uchiha's face, the Uchiha's gaze, and his own hand, lowered to his erect penis. It was awkward and clumsy at first, but then Naruto tilted his head back to face Sasuke, and his intent gaze and half-open mouth, swollen from hard work, dispelled all doubt. When Naruto came, Sasuke bit into his lips, swallowing the other's moan and scream. Sasuke helped her tidy herself up and get dressed. The old-fashioned clothes felt unfamiliar, tight and clinging on top, like demonic gazes, but loose underneath, allowing her tail to swing freely beneath the folds. The Geto was forced to stand straight and proud, and the mask allowed him to hide any excess emotions. Naruto looked down at himself in the snow-white fabrics, then at the stern blackness of the Uchiha. Now only his mask glowed brightly. "You said the red straps are the beginning of the journey. What does the white color mean?" Sasuke, who had looked Naruto over and nodded to himself in satisfaction, looked up. "They put you in rooms where the main decor is spider lilies, and they dress you in white clothes. Nothing comes to mind?" Naruto's eyes widened in surprise and horror. "Am I dead?" "For the world of people, yes. You said I could break free. That when I opened the damn door." A rapid knock interrupted Naruto's anger, and then the door creaked, and the cat mask slid through the doorway without waiting for permission. "I apologize for my tactlessness, but Sasuke-sama, I fear the master is losing his patience. Orochimaru-sama asked me to convey that if the T-Demon does not deign to appear in his chambers, he will appear in the T-Demon's chambers." Naruto saw the Uchiha's hand clench into a fist. Clench and relax. And then Sasuke turned around. "We'll talk when I get back. Don't leave your chambers." Sasuke hesitated, but forced himself to add, "Please, wait for me." Naruto watched in surprise as Sasuke left, the door closing behind him. So there was a hierarchy in this world, and there were those above Sasuke who he had to restrain his temper in front of. Those who made him worry, if not for themselves, then for those in a more vulnerable position. Like Naruto, for example. There was no arrogance in Sasuke's request, only concern. The door creaked again, and the maid slipped inside cautiously, like a spy. Naruto stared in surprise at the pink locks as the cat closed the door and listened to the sounds outside. There was something vaguely familiar about her, and then she turned and removed her mask. "Sakura," Sakura hissed, putting her finger to her lips. "Don't yell. We don't have much time. Listen carefully. You have to leave this place." "I'll help," Sasuke asked. "Naruto, have you ever wondered where Sasuke got my heart from? You can't brew something that's not in your collection. And have you ever wondered where the other heart owners went?" The T-Demon paused before the double doors, reaching the earth and ceiling. Warm reflections from the wall light smoldered in the depths of the scale-like ornamentation. Sasuke evened out his breathing and calmed his thoughts before touching the dark green. His fingertips tingled, then the sharp itch gave way to numbness, and scarlet spots spread where they touched the scales. The ragged sound of a biwa rang in his ears, and the doors creaked open. Sasuke had already paid with his blood twice that night to gain entry. It wasn't so much the waste of his energy that irritated him, but the paranoid cowardice of the Serpentine Grotto's master. Waiting in the hall were the old serpent Orochimaru and a cat-like attendant, who was tugging at the strings of a biwa. The demon sat at a low lacquered table, one leg tucked under him and the other positioned so he could rest his elbow on his knee and wave a simple bamboo fan. His long black hair hung loose and careless. His yellow eyes, slit like dragons, shimmered with gold, and his eyeliner, with its sharp arrows, was meant to give his face a predatory appearance. Sasuke resisted the urge to wince. His fear of Orochimaru had long since given way to disgust. The demon at the table was dressed in inconspicuous gray fabrics, and his only jewelry was a tomo snail, each snail-shaped earring made of blue stone, swayed with the slightest turn of his head. The earring symbol repulsed Sasuke as much as their owner. The Uchiha resisted the urge to touch his own neck, where, at Orochimaru's will, a seal of similar shape could appear, a reminder of his past helplessness and his present situation. The attendant, seated on the bare floor to Orochimaru's right, plucked a drawn-out note from a string. When the vibrations died down, Sasuke barely bowed, formal but not respectful. Then gray lips stretched into a semblance of a smile. I was already worried whether the T-Demon would have time for the old snake. Sasuke resisted the urge to raise a skeptical eyebrow. Wasn't it this old snake who had sent the servant after him with threats? However, for now, he still had to follow the terms of the contract. Sasuke snapped his fingers, and the outline of a glass vessel containing delicate golden tea appeared in the air. Tea made from human feelings is not something to be rushed into. The maid, who had been focused on the game until then, turned her head toward the fragrant vessel. Her green eyes gleamed hungrily through the slits of her cat mask. The vessel tilted, and transparent gold rushed in a thin stream towards the surface of the lacquered table. But before breaking on the smooth wood and splashing everything with sparkling drops, it gurgled and filled a transparent bowl that appeared as suddenly as the vessel. The aroma filled the hall. Orochimaru's eyes clouded over. The servant made a mistake, slipping a bone claw from the string, but immediately straightened up and continued playing, yet every gesture now conveyed tension and effort, as if skill and concentration had dissipated into the air along with the tea intoxication. Orochimaru folded his fan with a snap and waved it in his direction. The cup floated to his feet and landed on his long fingers. The snake was in no hurry to drink and get drunk. He gently shook the transparent glass, and the golden surface spread out in circles. I heard you got a fox. It doesn't concern you. Both demons abandoned politeness, using the informal. You? Sasuke was no longer a frightened child who had lost his family. He couldn't yet break the contract he'd made in fear and powerlessness many years ago, but he had no intention of letting Orochimaru into anything that wasn't stipulated in the terms. You can't avoid problems with a newborn demon. Give him to me for training. I'll return him when he copes with his new nature. Orochimaru looked over the bowl, amusement sparkling in his eyes. Of course, the snake knew Sasuke would send him packing, but his reaction could still hint at his attack tactics. By taking off your clothes, you expose your body. By showing your emotions, you reveal your fears and desires. Sasuke responded with an even coldness. My demons are my concern. Orochimaru took a sip of the drink, closing his eyes. The snake stalled for time, while Sasuke mentally calculated how big a problem the encounter with the guard in the passage had been. If he hadn't cut off Haiden's head, it's unlikely Orochimaru would have taken an interest in the fox. After all, Naruto wasn't his first demon ward. Kakuzu requested compensation for the damage caused. What does he want? What can you wish for from the T-Demon? Sasuke was silent. Orochimaru didn't finish. The servant, with a sharp downward motion, filled the silence with a resonant vibration. Sasuke winced. The B-wall wasn't for the ear, just another defense. The sounds disrupted his thoughts and prevented him from concentrating his power wordlessly. If Sasuke had decided to attack, he would have had to draw his steel or chant the spell aloud. Orochimaru used to drown in the pleasure of drinking tea made from human hopes and suffering. Closing his eyes and throwing his head back, unafraid to bare his throat to the T-Demon. Now, he prudently poisoned Sasuke with snake venom upon entry. Bitch twice. And he numbed his head with discordant sounds. The snake set down the half-empty cup with a light knock. Kakuzu desires tea made from demon senses. For a moment, Sasuke lost control of his face. I don't supply anything like that. Sasuke, it's too early for you to quarrel with the one who controls the door pavilion. The Uchiha remained silent. Orochimaru waved his fan and narrowed his eyes, glaring at the grown, but still untamed demon before him. Give him the fox for an hour or two. Those tailed creatures have strong nerves. He'll survive. Sasuke didn't clench his hands into fists, but the vein in his arm bulged. Where did the owner of the door pavilion and his headless dog stay? Orochimaru's lips stretched into a satisfied smile before answering. I assigned Kakuzu quarters north of my doors. Naruto, have you ever wondered where Sasuke got my heart from? You can't brew something that's not in your collection. And have you ever wondered where the other heart owners went? Naruto's mind was racing, his body paralyzed as he tried to answer a few questions. Why hadn't he thought of this before? Well, there was plenty to think about without it. When you can't catch your breath, a lot goes unnoticed. Sakura nervously straightened the folds of her emerald kimono, creaked the door as she looked out, and quickly closed it back. I shouldn't have dumped all this on you like that. But let's talk calmly later. We have to go now. Naruto slowly looked at Sakura from the snow-white mask that she quickly put on her face to the half-cat paws with high insteps instead of feet. You are not human. Sakura snorted, but the sound held more resentment than arrogance. Whoever gets involved with Sasuke doesn't remain human for long. They either become demons or spirits. Spirits? Naruto was completely lost in his own shock. Of course, he'd long since realized the Uchiha wasn't a righteous man and didn't particularly value human life, but it was one thing to guess, and quite another to have it confirmed from the outside. This had happened to Naruto often before. A thought would only pass muster once someone else shared it. Sakura, having figured out to herself that hesitation in their case was tantamount to failure, grabbed Naruto by the wrist and resolutely dragged him along, just like she had done at the ill-fated party, where she had already followed Sasuke's orders, and Naruto still didn't know what awaited him. The great corridor curved left. Sakura stopped just short of Naruto bumping into her and peered around the corner to check the way. Naruto stared at her shoulders and back, clad in green fabric. Only the fabric had a strange look, as if touching it would make it disappear. Naruto decided to test it, and touched his emerald-scaled shoulder blade with his free hand. The fabric immediately rippled, revealing the cobalt blue beneath the illusion. Naruto wasn't familiar with the rules of the world, but he could put two and two together. You're not from the Snake Grotto? Sakura turned around and Naruto poked her in the chest for clarity, showing her the cold pattern of the real robe. Correct. Green is for the grotto's maids. Red is for the door pavilion, and blue is Lady Conan's color. Sakura nodded toward the turn. Let's go! The way is clear. No. Naruto pulled his hand away. Are you crazy? Sasuke won't spare you. Everything he wants isn't in this world. The words pierced his chest like a needle, but trusting Sakura, who had managed to get entangled with two demons and set Naruto up, would be, if not naive, then hasty. I'm not going with you until you tell me what Sasuke wants. Sakura pursed her lips in frustration. Promise me you'll go if I answer. It depends on how convincing it is. Naruto, I'm here for you. Is your conscience bothering you? Naruto's lips curled up, as if he was about to resort to something sharper and more bitter. Sakura endured his anger, turned around, and slowly removed her mask. She looked straight and open, then answered clearly and without evasion. Yes, I'm guilty before you. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just a chance to help. Naruto was at a loss. How often in life do you meet people willing to admit their mistakes and apologize? Experience has shown that you're more likely to be held captive by a demon than to cross paths with a courageous person willing to put aside their pride and risk their life for another. Sakura continued. Sasuke is looking for a way to free his brother. To do that, he needs to open the door. Door. What's behind the door I have to open? Your freedom and the one I need. The one I need. The one Sasuke needs. His brother. Of course. How could he not? Sasuke had deceived him when he promised Sakura's heart. Why shouldn't he deceive him again to get his own? Who knows what will happen to Naruto when he opens that door? Will they dispose of him like old keys? The pain spread from my chest to my back and down, twisting my guts. I wanted to sink my teeth into my wrist and bite until it bled, to concentrate the pain in one place, freeing my thoughts and soul. My hands went cold. Sakura looked down with concern. Your tail. The gold of the fur faded, becoming pale and barely glowing. Naruto wanted to fall down and curl up into a ball. I'm going with you, Naruto almost whispered with pale lips. Sakura sucked in a breath, trying to cope with someone else's pain. Naruto's appearance hurt. With trembling hands, the demoness pulled a faceless doll from a small pouch on her belt and dropped it to the floor. Clouds of steam immediately enveloped the doll. The white cloud grew to the size of a life-size figure, and when it dissipated, it revealed the stern, even features of a young woman. Her blue hair was pulled back into a high bun, her white skin, contrasting with the dark blue of her kimono, resembled a blank sheet of calligraphy, and her gaze was reserved and distant. It's a clone, Sakura hastened to explain, taking a small vial of dark red liquid from her belt pouch. The blue sleeve slipped slightly, revealing slender wrists, as the clone reached for the bottle. The cap popped open, revealing soft, full lips, coated in frosty blue powder, stained red. We have to pay a blood fee upon exit, Sakura continued explaining. Servants can only enter someone else's territory if accompanied by their masters. Orochimaru, that old coward, not only asks for a blood fee, but also poisons guests. Upon entry, you get a poison bite. Upon exit, you get an antidote. Why do demons go to him on such terms? Because Orochimaru has taken over the tea demon business. Only here can one obtain the most exquisite delicacy for those with power. Tea made from human feelings. Naruto answered himself. Right. The clone headed toward the folding doors with the familiar snake pattern. Only now the predators glittered with scarlet scales, filled with alien blood and awaiting another exchange of delicacy for antidote. Naruto didn't watch the clone open the portal door. Inside, the atmosphere was still painfully uneasy. Naruto turned and glanced down the dimly lit, curving corridor. No footsteps or voices were heard. It seemed he should be glad for his successful escape. No one would stop him or try to convince him to stay with another lie. Wasn't this liberation from the Uchiha's control what Naruto had wanted so much? Sakura pulled him by the hand, and then, in a familiar way, the ground disappeared from under her feet. After the snake, Sasuke headed straight for the insolent customers. The Uchiha entered a small room where a man with skin as dark as baked clay, covered in tattoos, reclined among pillows and incense burners. As Sasuke approached, the man looked up. His green eyes glowed coldly and had no pupils, and the tattoos were black threads, tightly stitched together. It was as if the demon had been cut into pieces and then painstakingly sewn back together. Kakuzu, also known as the owner of the door pavilion, did not find the person he expected to see next to Sasuke and raised an eyebrow questioningly. Sasuke chuckled. Will tea made from my feelings suit you?